Hi everyone, I'm Maureen Michaels, the Director of Social Media for Oneupweb, and with me I have Steve Balger, our Client Services Representative.
Hello.
And we're here today to talk to you about social media's impact on search.
So I thought we'd start out with a little Janet, because I like to start out every presentation with at least one member of the Jackson 5, and here she's saying, what have you done for me lately? And I think there are a lot of businesses out there, a lot of marketers out there that really question the value of social media. They allocate a lot of time toward it, a lot of resources toward it, and yet it can be difficult to attribute real significant bottom line growth from it. And so today we want to talk about the value that social media has when it comes to search engine optimization.
And so today our main point that we really want to stress is that social media marketing does play an important role in search engine optimization. And to make that point, we're going to go ahead and cover 6 topics. Steve's going to talk to you about branded results and reputation management. I'm going to cover the Facebook Open Graph. We'll talk about Bing and Google social layers, go over some link building techniques, talk about reviews, and briefly cover some social media search.
All right. Starting with branded search results. So social media, most companies out there by now will have some social media profile out there. And when you go to Google and you look for that company's brand name, a lot of times you will see some of their social media profiles showing up. So here we're looking at a branded search result on Google for Best Buy. And usually Google and the other engines don't typically like to give more than one or more than a few corporate listings from the Best Buy website. They like to switch it up and offer different types of search results. So here, what Best Buy has been able to do is through integrating their social media profiles very well. In addition to their corporate website, you can see a wiki page for Best Buy, you can see their corporate Twitter account, you can see their corporate Facebook, an iTunes app that they've developed, and then some news results on the bottom. So essentially Best Buy controls the vast majority of that front page real estate on Google search, which is a very powerful thing, but that's not always the case. In some cases, when you look for a company's brand name, you'll get, not always negative listings, but here we're looking at an example of a company out of the UK actually called CSL Sofas. And up until just a couple of months ago, actually, they had some pretty negative listings showing up for their brand name in Google. And they had a real reputation management problem going on. So below their corporate listings, their corporate website, you see some frown faces, and you see a complaints website. You see a site that actually refers to the reputation management problems that they have. And then on the bottom, you see another website that is basically somebody pleading for help for better customer service. So even though CSL Sofas has been relatively active in social media, they weren't active enough, they weren't integrating their social results well enough. And now, just a few months later, when you do that same search, you can see that their corporate LinkedIn profile shows up, their corporate Facebook, and then on the bottom, you actually see some YouTube listings being embedded right within main search results as part of universal search results. So there's still that one complaint site in between there, but what CSL's been able to do is through better integration, stronger integration, they've been able to more effectively control the messaging within Google search results for their brand name, and again, help from a reputation management standpoint.
So that takes us to the Facebook Open Graph. And to understand how this is really affecting search, we first need to explain what exactly the Open Graph is. So I'm going to try to do that. And I think the easiest way to explain what Facebook's Open Graph is to just say that it's a way to get information into Facebook and a way to get information out of Facebook. This is something that Facebook launched a little over a year ago. It's now on 2.5 million websites, so you can see that web developers are really embracing it. And probably the most recognizable social plugin that has to do with Facebook's Open Graph is the like button. Basically what the like button does is it's a snippet of code that a web developer can put on their website, on specific website pages, or even on products in their website. And someone will come into that site, hopefully they like that product or that home page, and they click the like button. They actually do have to log into Facebook, but they can do so right on that web page. And when they do click that like button, that story is broadcast out to all of their friends and followers on Facebook. So it's really kind of an exponential marketing tactic that people can use. How does that affect search? Well, right now for the search engines, for Google and Bing, you have to have really informative, compelling content. When you add Facebook in there, now it has to be engaging, likable, and shareable. So it actually has to be something that someone is going to want to promote to their friends. Links in Facebook drive people back to your website. That's pretty obvious. There's a little bit of a war going on right now with Facebook and Google, so Google isn't necessarily seeing Facebook links as a do follow, but that could change, and it's definitely gaining importance in Bing as well. And also just to talk a little bit about that war that's going on with Facebook and Google, and to kind of highlight how important the Open Graph is. Google just recently released something that they're calling the +1 button, which functions exactly like the Facebook button, where you have to have a Google profile. You can see something, you can give it a +1, and then when your friends search for something along those lines, they could see it. So for example, if Steve were looking for a new TV, and he went in and found one that he liked, and he had a Google profile set up, he could click that +1 button and say a couple months later, I'm looking for a new TV. When I search for it in Google, what I would see is Steve's recommendation for that.
And so that kind of brings us to Google's social search, which actually has been around almost 2 years now. And there's been a lot of rumors flying around that Google is building a social network to compete with Facebook, since it's been able to become one of the most heavily trafficked websites out there, and really gaining a lot of power. So Google denies those claims, but what they can't deny is that they've been adding a lot of social layers to search. And actually, about 2 months ago, they released a pretty big update to Google social search. But here's how it sort of works. First of all, you need to have a Google profile, and you might not know it, but you probably have a Google profile, whether it's a YouTube profile, an AdWords profile, or something along those lines. And you need to go ahead and link that your profile with third-party social accounts like Twitter, Flickr, Quora, and other types of websites. And when you do that, you're sort of building this social circle, this social network, and you're telling Google, here are the people I'm connected to, here are those that I like to get updates from and receive recommendations from. And so once you have that set up, now what Google will do is, let's say, Maureen, I'm connected with Maureen on Twitter. If she goes out and shares a piece of content on Twitter, it doesn't really have to do anything with Google. And then I go to Google and I do a search related to that piece of content that Maureen has shared. Google will personalize my search results as long as I'm logged in. And so here we're looking at an example of that, where somebody looked for climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and they were connected with Matt Cutts, who was an engineer at Google, and they can see that he actually shared that particular piece of content. So what Google's social search aims to do is provide a more relevant, personalized experience within the search engines, and with that, rankings are influenced, meaning that I might see different rankings than Maureen, just because of my social network, and also the look of certain listings are influenced, maybe if they don't even change. Like Google here will say, this particular person has shared this piece of content. Now to do it, again, it's influenced by publicly available sites like Twitter, Flickr, Quora, Blogger, FriendFeed, Google Reader, and some others. Not yet Facebook. So Bing and Facebook have this thing going on right now, which we'll get into in just a minute. But right now, Facebook doesn't share personal profile information with Google. So as of now, they're not able to give you personalized search results based on information or content that your Facebook friends have liked, which is kind of a big piece of information that they're missing, given the popularity of Facebook, and one of the reasons that they've rolled out +1, which Maureen just talked about. So Bing isn't, they're no stranger to social search, and in October of last year, they rolled out what they call the Bing social layer. And they're really leveraging this partnership that they have with Facebook in order to kind of do what Google does, which is personalize search results. So what they've done is, let's say you go to Bing and you're logged into Facebook, as a lot of people are. Right when you open a browser, a lot of times you're automatically logged into your Facebook. So if you use Bing and you do a search, and one of your Facebook friends has liked a brand or they've liked a piece of content relating to your search, what Bing will do is then show you that one of your friends, and they'll show you the friends that have liked that, and provide a very prominent listing within Bing's search results. So what they do is they actually add new listings to the mix, and again, personalize that experience, and they'll also show you maybe listings that already exist there at the top relevant to your keyword, but that have been shared by people within Facebook. So this, again, is sort of a big advantage that Bing has right now over Google, and Google's trying to kind of play a little catch-up, and they're about a year behind on this relative to the relationship that Bing and Facebook have established. But this is really where search is heading, is a lot more social, a lot more influence, and so you need to capitalize on this. If for no other reason, to engage in social is the impact that it can have relative to organic search.
All right, so that takes us to link building, and we all know that links are very important for SEO. Now, Steve and I both touched on the weirdness that's going on between Google and Facebook right now, but we have to remember that Facebook isn't the only social network out there. So a lot of your social profiles are really going to help you with link building. The first one that I want to point out is Twitter. Both Google and Bing have come right out and said that they're now indexing content from Twitter. So it's really important that you're there. And I want to give you a piece of advice. It's my personal pet peeve. And that's when someone has a Facebook page set up and also a Twitter profile, and what they're doing is feeding their posts from Facebook directly into Twitter. Now, this is bad for a couple of reasons. We all know that the search engines frown on duplicate content. While there's no proof that they're penalizing anyone for having duplicate content in Facebook and Twitter, it's probably just really not a good idea, not a good habit to get into. Also, what happens when you feed from Facebook to Twitter is that you have to remember that Twitter only allows 140 characters or less. Facebook doesn't have this rule, so a lot of times what you will see is a message that gets completely cut off before the main point is made in Twitter, which is pretty bad. You might as well not have tweeted at all if all you're going to do is confuse your audience. And then the last thing to remember is that when you're engaging in social media, the people that you're engaging with are looking to have a personal connection with you. And if all you're doing is posting content from Facebook directly into Twitter and not trying to have any conversations or one-on-one engagement, people in Twitter and in your Twitter community are going to see that, and they're going to be pretty upset about it. YouTube. We all know that YouTube videos can show up in search results for your brand name. They can also show up in search results for keywords. You can help the search engines decide where your videos should show up for those keywords by including links in your video descriptions and links in your About Me section. The same is true for Flickr. It's heavily indexed in the search engines. You can put links in your photos. You can put links in your Flickr profile that will help you out. It's also a major part of both Google and Bing's social search component. So like how Steve was explaining, photos liked by individuals can be seen more prevalently in their friends' search results. LinkedIn has a very high page rank in search engine results, and if you haven't looked at LinkedIn in a while, I would really recommend that you do so. They're doing quite a bit to give companies a little better presence on LinkedIn. You can now really optimize your company page using keywords in your overview. You can add services where you can have them link directly to a specific page on your website. You can do the same thing with banners that you can link out. You can even embed YouTube videos, so it's worth taking another look. Also in link building, blogs are next, and if Steve will flip the slide for me. Blogs obviously have several SEO benefits, and I think that something that we forget is that blogs are considered social media. They can be really powerful for you. You know, they've got internal links, those inbound links. It's a way to keep your content fresh and relevant, which the search engines love. You can control that content and that message that you're pushing out there. Hopefully with your blog, you're building an active community of readers who are continuing to come back to your blog and continuing to spend more and more time, which the search engines look at. And also don't forget that you also have the opportunity to even further socialize your blog by including that Facebook like button that we talked about. Twitter also has a tweet button. You can stumble something. You can include links for people to be able to share it through text messaging even, or email. And just like blogging, Tumblr has great benefits for SEO as well.
Reviews is one point that one topic that we wanted to cover today, because they can be really important for search engine optimization. And I know a lot of companies out there might be a little hesitant to really encourage reviews. Maybe they're a little nervous about getting negative reviews. Sure. And things like that. But there are a lot of different types of review sites out there, a lot of places where people can make comments about your product, your service. And the thing is it's happening anyway, regardless of whether or not you're really fostering it or trying to encourage it. So places like Google Hotpot, which is a relatively new property that Google rolled out, focused on the local market and providing local recommendations for businesses. Amazon, LinkedIn, Yelp, Facebook, all these places, what they have an ability to do is create an opportunity for companies or people to become aware of what your products really have to offer. And in addition, from a search engine optimization standpoint, one of the factors included within Google's ranking algorithm is time on site. There are a lot of factors that go into it, but how much time somebody actually spends on your site can influence how well you get ranked organically. And if you have these reviews and you encourage reviews and you send out post-purchase emails to consumers to say, hey, come back and let us know what you think of your product. If you set up leaderboards that recognize some of your best reviewers and give them that kind of ego capital, and also encourage others to try and kind of create a little contest there, that helps as well, as do contests. When you create some type of product-related contest, it can help generate a lot of reviews for your products and your service and your brand. And then lastly, providing options for people to easily find reviews on your website, filter through the website and find what they're looking for. And all of this can create a lot of more time on site, better usability. So beyond the added benefit of increased sales and transparency, what it can do is help from an SEO standpoint, and that people will be, again, spending more time on the site and sharing these positive reviews or negative reviews, in which case it needs to be addressed, obviously. But this is one component that can also really help beef up your visibility within organic search.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about organic search. I just briefly want to cover social search. I don't think we'd be able to talk about social and search without talking about what you can actually do within these specific social networks. Now, I could go over all of them, but we just don't have the time. And right now, the main two that we should really be talking about are Twitter and Facebook. What social search is just basically the search that you can conduct within this social network. So with Twitter, when we're talking about social search, we're talking about real-time results. And that's what's unique about Twitter, is that they're going to return your search queries based on what's happening in real time. So whereas Google has a complicated algorithm that factors in time on site, content on your website, all that Twitter's focusing on is what was the newest, what was the latest. So it just shows you that if you're going to be engaging in Twitter, you need to continue to have fresh, relevant content. Now, Facebook's a little bit different. Their search can actually be broken down into what I like to say are 3 different categories. The first is people search, which is probably right now the most popular search on Facebook, trying to find people to connect to. The second search will actually return results from friends and friends of friends. And then the third is the one that I want to touch on the most, which is their advanced search. And right now, the advanced search has quite a few different filters. Those include people, pages, groups, apps, events, web results, which are actually powered by Bing, posts by friends, and posts by everyone. And the posts by friends and the posts by everyone is really where the like button, again, comes into play. Because if you're searching for something, say you're searching for a specific company like Mutual of Omaha, and one of my friends has been to their site, they liked something on their page, when I search for that in Facebook, I'm going to see that. And it's almost like my friend is giving them a testimonial. So it's really important for companies to be using this like button to be able to be found in Facebook search and to be a trusted company in Facebook. So just recapping today's main points, we talked about branded results and reputation management. We covered the Facebook Open Graph. Steve talked about Bing and Google social layers. We went over some link building tips. We talked about reviews and briefly covered social media search. So I hope that we've shown you that social media marketing does play an important role in search engine optimization.
And lastly, we thought we'd end with a little Janet too, and this is the Janet we all know and love, and the magic is working. So if for no other reason than to help with your organic search engine optimization efforts, social media is somewhere that your company needs to be, and there's a lot of places out there to be, a lot of different types of social outlets and networks and things like that, and it requires an important strategy to know where you should be spending your time. But an inherent benefit is that you can create a more personalized, relevant search experience for your prospective customers. So the value of social media is growing more and more, especially as it relates to SEO. So thank you for your time today, and I hope it was beneficial.
All right, thanks everyone.